Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. In this video, I'm going to break down the quarterback position for Week 6 of the NFL. Just a quick reminder, I build lineups primarily for the main slate, which means I exclude the primetime games, the Thursday nights, Sunday night, and Monday night games. I do, however, do a showdown video for the Thursday night and Monday night games. And by week 8, I hope to be doing a video for the Sunday night showdown as well. First thing I want to do is take a quick look back at week 5. In week 5, the top 5 projected quarterbacks were the following: Ryan, Jackson, Watson, Wentz, and Brady. The actual top 5 scoring last week were Deshaun Watson, 44.74 points, Matt Ryan, 35.9 points. Both those quarterbacks were from the same game. Teddy Bridgewater, 31.26 points. Dak Prescott with 29.22 points. And Tom Brady with 27.92 points. 3 of the top 5 in the projected ended up being in the top 5 scoring as well. And those were Watson, Ryan, and Brady. So you can see where scoring is slowly starting to catch up with the projections, which wasn't the case early in the season, but we have some statistics to go by, and so you see a closer correlation. Unlike some other positions, quarterback is starting to even out a little bit. Before I look at any of the contests or players or anything, the first thing that I do is I take a look at the Vegas lines and totals. I'm looking for the games with the highest totals, because those are going to be the games that have the players necessary for them to be high scoring games. That doesn't mean that's where I stop. That's just where I start. I consider all the games, but this is a place that I like to focus my attention at first. My thought is, to be a high scoring game, you need players to do the scoring. It's pretty simple. There are 10 games on the main slate this weekend. The Giants at New England is the Thursday night game. Pittsburgh at the Chargers is the Sunday night game. And Detroit at Green Bay is the Monday night game. Also, don't forget, the Carolina-Tampa Bay game is actually in England. And the kickoff for that is 9:30 in the morning Eastern Standard Time Sunday. So that won't be on the main slate either. But if you have a season-long team, make sure you pay attention to that and get your changes in before 9:30 in the morning on Sunday. So with that being said, this is the game lines and totals for the main slate. Houston's at Kansas City. Kansas City is a 5-point favorite, the highest total on the board at 54.5 points. Atlanta at Arizona. Atlanta is a 2.5-point favorite with a game total of 52. San Francisco visits the Rams. The Rams are a 3.5-point favorite with a game total of 50 points. Seattle at Cleveland. Seattle is a 1.5-point favorite with a game total of 48.5 points. Cincinnati visits Baltimore. Baltimore is an 11-point home favorite with a 47.5-point game total. New Orleans at Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a 1-point favorite with a 44.5-point game total. Philadelphia is at Minnesota. Minnesota is a 2.5-point favorite with a 44-point game total. Dallas on the road at the New York Jets. Dallas is an 8.5-point road favorite with a 43.5-point game total. Washington at Miami, the battle of the winless. Washington's been installed as a 3.5-point road favorite with a game total of 41 points. And Tennessee's at Denver. Denver's a 2.5-point favorite with the lowest total on the board at 39 points. Also wanted to mention the following teams are on a bye this week: Buffalo, Chicago, Indianapolis, and Oakland. The top scoring lineups the last 2 weeks in the Millie Maker on Draftkings utilized a four-player game stack from the second highest total on the board. And that's why looking at game totals is really an important part of building lineups. So that's why I do that first. With that strategy in mind, these are the quarterbacks with the highest totals in week 6. Remember, this is just from the main slate. Watson at Mahomes. That game's a 54.5 point game total. Ryan at Murray. 52 point game total. Garoppolo at Goff. 50 point game total. Seattle's Wilson at Cleveland's Mayfield. 48.5 point game total. And Cincinnati's Dalton at Baltimore's Jackson. 47.5 point game total. When I break down each position, I like to consider different statistical categories to cross-reference and identify the best from the rest. For quarterbacks, I consider the following. I like to look at attempts, yards per game, air yards per completion, fantasy points scored per game, their quarterback rating, and their individual matchups. Other things I consider later in the week are ownership, to where I can gain leverage if possible, and also value as far as when I'm building my lineups, the best value. And with quarterbacks, I primarily like to put one of their targets with them. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this in cash, but in the larger GPPs, as evident, the last 2 weeks, the top scoring games had 3 players from one team and one from another from the same game. But I like to, especially in the larger tournaments, I like to stack up at least one target with my quarterback. There's, quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson don't necessarily have to give him a target because he adds the running game to his repertoire. But for the most part, I do like to add a target with my quarterbacks. Now, the top 5 quarterbacks after the first 5 weeks for pass attempts are as follows. Goff, he's had 222 attempts. He's averaging 44 pass attempts a game. Matt Ryan, he has 222. He's averaging 44.4 pass attempts per game. Andy Dalton, he has 204. He's averaging 40.8 pass attempts per game. Kyle Murray, he's slacked off the last couple of weeks. He was at the top after week 3, but he's averaging he has 201 through the first 5 weeks, and that comes out to 40.2 pass attempts per game. Patrick Mahomes has 195 pass attempts. He's averaging 39 a game. And Carson Wentz has 174. He's averaging 34.8 attempts per game. What's really interesting that out of these 6 that I just gave you, 5 of them find themselves in the highest total games for week 6. The following is a list of quarterbacks leading the way in total yards, and I'll break it down even further, yards per game. Mahomes has 1,831 yards through 5 weeks. This comes out to 366.2 yards per game. Ryan, 1,655 yards. This comes out to 331 yards a game. Goff, 1,649 yards. This comes out to 329.8 yards per game. Prescott, 1,606 yards. It comes out to 321.2 yards a game. So those top 4 with the 300 plus yards per game on Draftkings, that also gets you a bonus. Once you hit 300 yards, you get the 3-point scoring bonus. Dalton, he's got 1,412 yards. He's averaging 282.4 yards a game. And Russell Wilson has 1,409 yards. He's averaging 281.8 yards per game. I don't expect you to memorize all this. I will break this down for you, and when I get to picking up my quarterbacks, I'll use these statistics to reference back and cross-reference. The following have the highest air yards per completion. Prescott is averaging 8.5 yards per completion. Wilson is averaging 7.8 yards per completion. Mahomes, 7.5 yards per completion. Wentz, 7.2 yards per completion. And Jackson, 7 yards per completion. So you're starting to see some of the same names in the same categories, and that's what I'm looking for. The following quarterbacks have the highest fantasy points per game. This how many they're scoring average through the first 5 games. Mahomes is averaging 27.9 fantasy points per game. Russell Wilson, 26.7 fantasy points per game. Lamar Jackson, 26.5 fantasy points per game. Deshaun Watson, 26.4 fantasy points per game. And Matt Ryan, 26.1 fantasy points per game. The following is the quarterback rating. These are the top 5 quarterback ratings. Wilson leads the way with 126.3 quarterback rating. Also, note quarterback rating factors in everything. Interceptions, touchdowns, efficiency, all those things are factored into this rating. So again, number 1 is Wilson with a 126.3. Deshaun Watson, 115.9. Patrick Mahomes, 114.7. Prescott, 106 even. And Minshew from Jacksonville, 105.6. Now let's take a look at the matchups. These are the defenses that are giving up the most points per week to the quarterback position. Miami, they're giving up 28.9 points per game. This week they're going to face Case Keenum, Washington. Atlanta, they're giving up 25.3 points per game. This week they face Murray on the road in Arizona. Arizona, right underneath Atlanta, they're giving up 24.8 points per game. This week they're going to face Matt Ryan from Atlanta. New Orleans, they're giving up 24.5 points per game. And this week they're going to face off against Minshew in Jacksonville. And Washington's giving up 23.9 points per game. This week they face Rosen from Miami. So you can see Miami and Washington are going to be playing. Atlanta and Arizona are going to be playing. So it's pretty interesting. These are the defenses that are giving up the least amount of points to the quarterback position. Denver's number 1. They're allowing 11.3 fantasy points per game. This week they face Mariota from Tennessee. San Fran's number 2. They're giving up 12.3 fantasy points per game. This week they face Jared Goff. Number 3 is Dallas. They're giving up 13 points per game. And this week they're going to face Darnold. He's been cleared to play. Minnesota's number 4. They give up 15.9 points per game. This week they're facing Carson Wentz. And number 5 is Tennessee. They're giving up 17.4 points per game. This week they're on the road against Denver and Joe Flacco. Now what I do is I take all these numbers and put them in my correlation machine and see what it spits out. Truthfully, I wish it was really that easy. But these are the numbers that I like to use when I'm putting together a player pool for quarterbacks. The following are the quarterbacks that I'm going to be targeting in week 6. Excuse me. Number 1, Patrick Mahomes. He's the most expensive quarterback on the slate. He's $7,500. He's averaging 26.5 points, fantasy points per game at home. Houston has the 31st ranked defense. They're giving up 28.6 points to the quarterback. Kansas City has a 30.3 point implied total. It's the highest total on the board. Averaging 32.67 points per game after a loss. And I'm basically signed me up for Mahomes if I can get up there. I don't think I have to put too much thought into this one. And one thing you got to watch is Mahomes. He's got the big question mark by his name. his ankle got stepped on in the game against Indianapolis Sunday night, and he was limping around pretty good, and it did affect the outcome of the game. But he's getting treatment and says that he should be fine. But definitely watch that. And Sunday at 11:30, the NFL injury report comes out, so be aware of that. The next quarterback that I'm interested in is from the same game, Deshaun Watson. He's averaging 26.4 fantasy points per game. He has a 69% completion percentage. It's a nice pivot off Mahomes. He's $800 less. It's the highest total game. The one thing for me on this is going to be ownership, because everybody's seen, last week Watson scored 44 points, fantasy points. Their team scored, I believe it was 55 points in that game. Scored a lot of points, and he's probably going to be pretty popular this week. And everybody else knows that he's $800 less than Mahomes. And if Mahomes is a little bit banged up, you could see the ownership for Watson going way up. And that's something to pay attention to and maybe look in other areas. But with this being the highest total game on the board, I'm definitely going to be and have my share of one or both of these quarterbacks in different lineups. Next is Matt Ryan. He's averaging 44 pass attempts a game. He's scoring 26.1 fantasy points a game. He's averaging 331 yards passing a game, 312 on the road, 2.67 touchdowns a game. Arizona's giving up 24.8 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. Atlanta has a 27.3 point fly total for the game, and he could be a nice pivot away from all the ownership that Mahomes and Watson's going to get. He's $300 less than Watson and $1,100 less than Mahomes, and he's putting the ball in the air no matter what. Their running game is pretty much non-existent, so he's definitely going to be my player pool. Lamar Jackson from Baltimore. He's $6,900. I really don't like his price because I'm afraid of the game script of this game. And what I mean by that is if they're ahead or they're controlling the game with Mark Ingram, there's not going to be the need for him to run the ball. He gets a lot of rushing yards from scrambling. So if there's no need for him to throw the ball, he's probably not going to get those scrambling yards. And it might temper his output. So a little bit concerned about that, but it's intriguing. The matchup is really intriguing. He's averaging 93 rushing yards per game at home, and he's scoring 26.5 fantasy points per game. And he's the one quarterback that I mentioned that you can play without stacking a target. I like to put, like Henderson or Andrews with him, but you can get away with running Jackson by himself. But again, I'll be watching ownership, and I need to think a little bit more about this game script. I'm just really concerned that they'll lean on Ingram, and Ingram's been getting a huge share of the goal line carries, so that's something to consider. Next is Dak Prescott. He's $6,200. He's a value off of Mahomes and Watson. He should pick the Jets apart. They're 30th ranked defense, and I see this game as perhaps they use Dak to put away the Jets early and come back with Zeke to seal it up. If the Jets would do some scoring, that could potentially make Prescott throw even more. But I see this as a bounce back for Dak. He had 3 interceptions in the last game, and I believe a fumble as well. No, Zeke had the fumble, but three. Let's just take a quick look. Pretty sure it was Green Bay had, yeah, 3 interceptions. So you'll see a bounce back for Dak this week. And the game script again could affect negative. Somehow Dallas puts the Jets away early. See them basically doing what Green Bay did to them, which is put it in the hands of Zeke Elliott, or they put it in the hands of Aaron Jones. But you could see this game as being a similar type of game. Cowboys should be mad after that loss. Played real sloppy. So Dak comes out, he's real efficient, put some points on the board, and then seal it away with Zeke. So, but he's a nice pivot with that price, $6,200, and the Jets' pass defense has been getting picked apart. Number 6 is Cousins. He's 50. Make sure what Cousin is. $5,200. The thing with Cousins is the guy named Dalvin Cook. The Eagles are really strong against the rush. So if they stack the line to stop Cook, you could see a situation where Cousins, has to go to the passing game. Philly's allowing 25.5 points per game on the road. Cousins should have fairly low ownership. And Philly's defense is also allowing 288 yards per game. So Cousins could be a really nice value. If Philly stops Cook, they could use Cook in other ways by throwing the ball to him, which is a weakness of Philadelphia as well. But could possibly be a nice sleeper this week, and pivot off of all the other higher owned quarterbacks. So to sum it all up, the research supports the following quarterbacks to target: Mahomes, Watson, Ryan, Jackson, Prescott, and Cousin. There's 10 games on the main slate, so this diminishes the choices, but I feel like that's a nice, strong group of quarterbacks to work with as far as building lineups. I don't MME, mass multi-entry, like the 150 lineups that you can put in some contests. Kudos to the guys that are able to do that. I'm just not able to do that financially right now. So I try to build really strong balanced lineups and put them in different contests. I play a variety of the GPP head-to-head, 50-50, double up. I just get a variety and spread it out like that. Thank you for joining me. I will be posting my next video on running back research and strategy soon after this one. If you would please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell so you get notified when my next video posts, I'd really appreciate it. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports. My name's Ty Patton, and I'll see you real soon with the running back strategy video. Thanks a lot.